97% of climate scientists agree that the Earth is warming. That sounds pretty definitive, right? Welcome to Politics Laid Bare with Tim O'Hare. I'm your host, Tim O'Hare, and today I'll be looking at the politics of climate change. Now, it's important to note that I'm not a scientist, so I won't be trying to prove or disprove the science of climate change in this video. My channel is about politics, so I will be focusing on the politics of this issue. Firstly, where does the often quoted statistic that 97% of climate scientists agree that the Earth is warming come from? The phrase is so ubiquitous, but according to Alex Epstein, it is likely that 97% of people making the 97% claim have absolutely no idea where that number comes from. The claim is believed to have come from a 2013 paper by John Cook and his colleagues titled Quantifying the Consensus on Anthropogenic Global Warming in the Scientific Literature. The abstract of the paper states that Cook et al. Found that over 97% endorse the view that the Earth is warming up and human emissions of greenhouse gases are the main cause. Now, there is a crucial difference between 97% of scientists and 97% of papers surveyed. If you were to select 97 papers that said that vaccines cause autism and 3 papers that said that vaccines do not cause autism, it would be wrong to say that 97% of scientists agree that vaccines cause autism. Only 97% of the papers you selected. Cook's study has been challenged by David Friedman, who found that just 1.6 of the papers Cook surveyed actually stated that the majority of global warming was caused by man-made greenhouse gases. To overcome this, Cook has created multiple categories of endorsement: explicit endorsement without quantification and implicit endorsement. Papers with explicit endorsement without quantification, according to Cook, are those where the author explicitly states that there is a connection between human activity and climate change, but does not quantify the degree to which man is causing global warming, while implicit endorsement is for papers which neither explicitly state whether mankind is to blame for climate change nor quantify the extent of it. This is hardly as convincing as the popular line, 97% of climate scientists agree that the Earth is warming. It may as well be rewritten as 97% of papers surveyed agree or imply that there is a connection between man-made greenhouse gases and global warming of anywhere between 0.01 and 100%. So why would one side of the debate be so cavalier with the truth? Statements like 97% of climate scientists agree that the Earth is warming stifle debate by giving one side a cloak of legitimacy. If you disagree with the so-called scientific consensus, you are labelled a denier and anti-science. This is a curious blend of philosophies from medieval Christianity and the Enlightenment. Everyone who disagrees with enlightened science is a heretic who should be shunned from society. Now, my knowledge of the Enlightenment isn't perfect, but wasn't the Enlightenment all about freedom of thought, the abandoning of dogma, and the scientific method, not prescribed conclusions and the demonizing of anyone who went against orthodoxy? Believers in man-made climate change regularly complain about the politicization of climate change, yet, as Greenpeace co-founder Dr. Patrick Moore notes, consensus is a political term. Science is about truth and not about consensus. At the time of Galileo, it could be claimed that there was a scientific consensus for geocentrism, but that does not make Galileo's theory of heliocentrism any less true. Moreover, when believers of man-induced climate change simply refer to the alleged 97% consensus, they ignore the crux of the debate. As Moore notes, no one, not even the most fervent skeptic, denies that the climate is changing. The debate is less about whether the Earth is warming and more about the cause and the extent of global warming as well as what can be done to prevent it. These debates are important, but they are hamstrung by the tactics of one side of the debate. As I have said, one tactic is to hide behind so-called scientific consensus and expert opinion. Another is to use the language of urgency. Pierre McIver and Patricia Mallam note the recent shifts in language to climate emergency and climate crisis amongst believers of man-induced climate change. This tactic was used by the organisers of the global strike for climate change in September 2019, when they said the climate crisis is an emergency, but we're not acting like it. Politicians of all sides have used crisis for political gain, from the Peloponnesian War to the War on Terror. With the climate debate comes urgent calls for action, and the frequent casualties are civil liberties, democracy, and the economy. David Runciman wrote in Foreign Policy that democracy is the planet's biggest enemy, and went on to entertain the idea of the adoption of a Chinese-style one-party state that was free from the short-termism of electoral cycles and therefore able to combat climate change. Furthermore, freedom of speech and freedom of opinion are also being threatened. In 2013, Dr. Bob Carter was not renewed from his position as an adjunct professor of geology at James Cook University for his skepticism of human-caused global warming. More recently, the editor of The Conversation, Misha Kitchell, said, "Climate change deniers and those shamelessly peddling pseudoscience and misinformation are perpetuating ideas that will ultimately destroy the planet. As a publisher, giving them a voice on our site contributes to a stalled public discourse." This meant that those disagreeing with the purported scientific consensus were not able to publish articles on The Conversation or post comments against the climate change orthodoxy. While The Conversation is legally entitled to publish and reject whatever opinions it likes, its reputation as an academic publication is compromised by this decision to shut down one side of the debate. This is also another example of how a consensus can be manufactured to give one side the illusion of legitimacy. Although the debate about human-induced climate change might be scientific, the suggested solutions are usually political and economic. It is worth noting that if 97% of climate scientists agree that the Earth is warming, why are the faces of the climate movement never educated in science? Surely they could find more credible sources than these people. Governments throughout the world have implemented carbon taxes, while there have been widespread calls for the embracement of renewable energies, i.e. solar and wind power. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for a Green New Deal which would achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions, create millions of high-wage jobs, invest in infrastructure and industry, secure clean air and water, and promote justice and equity. One of the ways she has said that America will do this is by meeting 100% of the US power demand with renewable and zero-emission sources by 2050. This is at best ambitious and at worst dangerous for the US economy. As the International Energy Agency noted, only about 0.4% of the world's energy comes from solar or wind power. To suggest it could be rolled out at a massive level without implications for the economy and our standard of living is supremely naive. Ocasio-Cortez estimates that her proposals would cost the US government upwards of $10 trillion. While she claims that it would stimulate the economy and provide jobs for millions of Americans, a detailed cost-benefit analysis has not yet been undertaken, including the costs of rapidly transitioning Americans out of the coal industry and reskilling them for the renewable energy sector. In April 2019, National Grid published research to suggest that renewable energy posed a threat to energy security, which the UK government ignored. The UK was subsequently hit by its worst blackout in over a decade. All this suggests that the debate should not be rushed and that proponents of renewable energy should be held accountable. It is also worth noting that the option of nuclear power is almost never tabled by climate change activists. The prospect of nuclear power presents an interesting alternative as it is a clean energy source, yet unlike solar and wind power, it has the proven capacity to power a modern industrial economy. When considering alternative power sources, surely the one that offers the least disruption to our economy and way of life should be considered foremost. The fact that climate change activists so frequently exclude the nuclear option raises doubts about their scientific and economic capability. It also makes you question whether reducing carbon emissions is their primary goal, or if they want to radically deindustrialize society. If we were in a climate crisis, it means that we will all be impacted by climate change. So shouldn't we all have a discussion about what measures we take to reduce CO2 emissions rather than just jumping on a few of those options? At the end of the day, I can't know for certain the cause of climate change and the extent to which it is a problem. What I do know about is the politics, which I find to be problematic. Some people say, forget the politics, we've got to act now. The choice is whether we have an open debate about the extent to which the planet is warming and the implications of the proposed solutions, or whether we accept the present orthodoxy unquestioningly. I know which one I prefer. I'm Tim O'Hare from Politics Laid Bare with Tim O'Hare.